Have you ever had that quiet, ugly fear that if you step away for even a second, if you choose your dream, your career, one opportunity, you'll come back and find out everyone replaced you like you were never essential? Because that fear used to whisper to me every time I packed a suitcase. Not because I didn't trust myself, but because I grew up in a family where love always felt competitive, like there was only room for one woman to be celebrated at a time. So when I left for a business trip, an overseas design competition I'd worked years to earn, I kept telling myself I was being dramatic. I told myself, it's just a few weeks, my fiancé loves me, my sister is my sister, my parents might be complicated, but they wouldn't let anything happen. But let me ask you this. What would you do if the people who clapped the loudest at your engagement were secretly waiting for you to leave? What would you do if the woman who helped zip you into your wedding dress was the same woman who couldn't wait to wear it? And what would you do if you came home expecting hugs and updates, and instead your sister introduced your fiancé as her husband with your parents standing behind her like it was normal? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And the worst part wasn't even the betrayal. The worst part was the moment I realized they weren't shocked. They weren't embarrassed. They were relieved, like I was finally out of the way. I remember standing there, hearing my own heartbeat, feeling that hot, familiar panic rise in my throat, the fear of being painted as the jealous one, the angry one, the one who ruins the family by refusing to accept disrespect. And my sister, she just smiled. She actually smiled and waited for me to break. She wanted tears, she wanted yelling, she wanted a scene she could use to make me look unstable while she looked chosen. My parents watched me the same way, like they were bracing to react so they could blame me for the explosion they caused. And my fiancé, he couldn't even meet my eyes at first. So I did the only thing that confused all of them. I laughed, not because it was funny, because in that second, I understood something my sister didn't. She thought she married him for his money, but the man she actually married was about to cost her more than she could imagine. For inheritance stories, if you're wondering how a sister even gets close enough to steal your fiancé, you have to understand the kind of family I came from. One where love was never just love. It was ranking. It was comparison. It was who looked better at Thanksgiving, who got praised louder, who brought home the kind of partner my parents could brag to their friends about. And as a Black woman, I learned early that being good was never enough. You had to be impressive, but not intimidating, successful, but not too independent, confident, but not too much. My parents loved me, I think, but they loved me in a way that always came with instructions. Smile more, don't talk about race, don't argue, don't embarrass us, be grateful. And my sister, Sheila, she learned a different lesson. If you can't be the most accomplished, be the most chosen. She wasn't stupid, she was strategic. She had this gift for making people feel sorry for her and proud of her in the same breath. She'd cry and my mother would run to her, she'd complain and my father would soften. And if I tried to explain how she played games, I'd get the same look every time, like I was starting drama. Have you ever been the one who tells the truth in a family that survives on pretending? Because that was my role. I was the responsible one, the strong one, the one who didn't get to fall apart because everyone assumed I could handle it. I worked for everything. I went to school, built my portfolio, stayed up late sewing samples in a tiny apartment, making my own opportunities because nobody was handing me anything. Design wasn't a hobby to me. It was the first place I ever felt like I could breathe. And when I finally got invited overseas for a major design competition, it felt like proof that all those lonely nights meant something. But my family didn't celebrate it the way I expected. My parents nodded like it was nice, then asked how long I'd be gone and whether it was wise right now with the wedding coming. My sister smiled too wide and said, "Wow, must be nice," the way people say it when they don't mean it. And that's the thing. My sister didn't hate me for being happy. She hated me for being admired. She couldn't stand when someone looked at me like I was the one with momentum. So she always tried to pull attention back to herself. Subtly at first. A comment about my hair, a joke about how I'm married to my work, little warnings that men don't like ambitious women, little needles disguised as concern. Then came my fiancé, Marcus. On paper, he was every parent's dream. Polished, well-connected, from money, the kind of man who could walk into a room and make people feel like he belonged there. He was charming enough to make my aunties laugh and careful enough to call my father sir like he respected him. And I'm not gonna lie, after years of feeling like I had to prove my worth, it felt good to be chosen by someone who looked like security. But the more my parents fell in love with what he represented, the more I started noticing something that made my stomach tight. They cared about him more than they cared about me. They'd ask him about his work, his plans, his legacy, like he was already the center of the family. They'd tell me, "Don't mess this up," like I was lucky he picked me. And my sister? My sister was obsessed with him in a way that pretended to be supportive. She'd compliment his watch, laugh too hard at his jokes, find excuses to text him about wedding details. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself sisters can be friendly. I told myself I should be grateful my fiancé got along with my family. But then I'd catch little moments. Her leaning too close, her touching his arm when she spoke, her eyes flicking to me to see if I noticed, like she needed me to know she could take what was mine if she wanted. Have you ever had someone compete with you for attention so long you start questioning your own instincts? That was me. Still, I tried to make it work because I wanted a peaceful life. I wanted a wedding that didn't feel like a battlefield. I wanted to believe my family could be normal for once. So when wedding planning started and my schedule got tight because of the overseas competition, my sister offered to help. She acted sweet about it. She told my parents, "I'll make sure everything's perfect for her." And my mother practically melted. The dress was the biggest thing. I'd saved for it. I'd chosen it myself. It wasn't just fabric, it was a symbol that I was finally getting to have something beautiful without fighting for it. My sister insisted on coming to the fitting. She cried when she saw me in it, which should have felt like love, but something about her tears felt hungry. She kept saying, "You look like a princess," and I kept hearing, "I want to be the one in it." Then, the closer my trip got, the more everyone started treating my opportunity like an inconvenience. "Do you really have to go right now?" my mom asked. "Can't you schedule it?" My father said, "Family comes first," like my career was a selfish hobby. My sister said, "Don't worry, I'll hold it down." And I remember looking at her and feeling this strange chill, like a door closing softly. But I ignored it because I was tired of being the suspicious one. I was tired of always having to be the guard dog just to keep my life intact. So I left. I boarded that plane with my sketchbook and my nerves and my heart full of hope, telling myself I was building a future for my marriage too. I didn't know my sister was watching my departure like a starting gun. And I didn't know my parents, my own parents, were about to choose peace with her over loyalty to me. Because while I was overseas chasing a dream I'd earned, they were back home rewriting my life like I was just a placeholder. And the night before my flight, I stood over my open suitcase like it was another piece of luggage I couldn't afford to carry. Because part of me was already afraid of what people would say, that I was choosing my career over my man, that I was too ambitious, that I was about to learn the hard way a woman can't have everything. And I hated that those fears even lived in me. But they did, so I tried to silence them by doing everything right before I left. Final dress fitting confirmed, deposits paid, vendor numbers saved, Marcus kissing my forehead like a man who wanted to marry me, my sister offering to help with the last little errands while I was gone. It all looked so normal I almost believed it. Until I was overseas and the normal started cracking in tiny, stomach-sickening ways. Marcus stopped answering on the first ring like he always did. My sister posted a photo of champagne flutes with the caption, "Cheers to new beginnings," and no explanation. My mom suddenly got short with me on calls like I was interrupting something. And when I asked directly, "Is everything okay?" she hit me with that fake calm families use when they're hiding a fire. "Don't stress yourself out over there. Focus on your competition." Then on the third day, the bridal boutique emailed me a pickup confirmation, except I hadn't scheduled pickup. And when I called the shop in the middle of the night with my heart pounding, the woman on the phone said, "Yes, ma'am, your gown was collected this afternoon." And when I asked who signed for it, she hesitated and said my sister's name, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I tried to tell myself there was an innocent reason. Maybe she was moving it for alterations. Maybe she was helping like she promised. But the fear wouldn't leave. Because why wouldn't anyone tell me first? And why did it feel like everyone suddenly wanted me distracted, grateful, and quiet? I called Marcus again and again until he finally answered, sounding annoyed. And when I said, "Why did my sister pick up my dress?" he paused for half a second too long and said, "Babe, you're overthinking. She's just handling stuff." And I swear I heard a woman laugh in the background, soft and close. And when I asked, "Who is with you?" his voice turned cold in that way that makes you feel childish for asking normal questions. "Don't do this right now. You're abroad. Focus." And then he hung up. I stood in my hotel room in a different country, staring at my reflection in the dark window, feeling that humiliating mix of dread and disbelief, because I didn't want to be the woman who assumes the worst, but I also didn't want to be the woman who gets played and then blamed for not seeing the signs. And the final crack came the next morning when my dad texted me one sentence. No hello, no pride, no good luck, just call your mother when you can. Something about that line felt like a door closing. So I called immediately, and my mom didn't answer. And when she finally did, her voice sounded tight, like she'd been trying or rehearsing. And she said, "Baby, just come home when you're done." And I said, "What happened?" And she whispered, "It's complicated." Like my life was a problem they'd already solved without me. That's when the fear turned into certainty, and I booked the earliest flight I could afford, sitting in the airport with my hands shaking, thinking about my dress, my fiancé, my sister, my parents, and realizing I wasn't rushing home to save a wedding anymore. I was rushing home to find out who had already stolen it. When I landed back home, I wasn't even fully thinking straight yet. I was running on airport coffee, adrenaline, and the sick certainty that something was wrong. But I still didn't believe it could be what my gut was screaming. Because who does that? Who takes your dress, your fiancé, your future, and acts like you're the problem for noticing? I got off the plane, dragged my suitcase to baggage claim, and called my mom again. No answer. Called my dad. Straight to voicemail. And Marcus? Marcus finally texted, "We need to talk." Not, "I miss you," not, "Are you okay?" Just, "We need to talk." Have you ever read a message and felt your whole body go cold because you already know you're about to be blamed for something you didn't break? I went straight from the airport to my parents' house because I needed answers and I needed them fast. The driveway was full of cars, too many cars for a normal day. And when I walked up to the front door, I heard laughter inside. Laughter, like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't a woman coming home from across the world with her life slipping through her fingers. I opened the door and stepped into a room that felt like a punch. Streamers, flowers, a cake on the dining table, people I recognized, cousins, church friends, neighbors, turning to look at me like I was late to my own surprise party. And right there, in the middle of it all, was my sister, Danielle, wearing white. Not just white, my wedding dress, the one I had tried on while she cried those hungry tears and told me I looked like a princess. She was standing there like she'd been waiting for her moment, holding a champagne glass like a trophy, smiling like she'd won something that was always meant to be hers. I couldn't breathe for a second. My suitcase handle was still in my hand, and my brain couldn't decide whether to drop it or swing it. Then I saw him, Marcus, standing beside her, his hand on the small of her back like it belonged there, a ring on his finger. And when he looked at me, his eyes didn't look guilty, they looked cautious, like he was watching for my reaction, like he was counting on it. Danielle tilted her head and said loud enough for the room to hear, "Oh my God, you're back!" And my mother, my own mother, stepped forward, grabbed my hands and whispered, "Please don't do this right now. Please don't do this," as if I was the one about to ruin something, as if the betrayal was already done and my job was only to make it easier on everyone else. My father wouldn't even meet my eyes. He just cleared his throat and said, "Let's be calm. Calm. That word people throw at you when they've done something unforgivable and they need you quiet so they can pretend it wasn't violent." Danielle's smile widened, and she lifted her glass slightly like she was announcing a raffle prize. "Everyone," she said, "I want to introduce my husband." My husband. She said it like she'd practiced, like she'd been dreaming of saying it in front of me. Then she reached back and grabbed Marcus's hand and pulled him forward. "Marcus," she said sweetly, "tell her." Marcus swallowed, his jaw tight, and he said, "It happened fast." Happened fast, like a hurricane happens fast, like betrayal is weather, like a wedding just falls from the sky onto your sister's body. I looked around the room for someone, anyone, to look uncomfortable, to look ashamed, to look like they understood how insane this was. But people were smiling. Some were awkward smiling, yes, but still smiling. My auntie patted my arm like I was the one going through a breakup, not the one being publicly robbed. A cousin muttered, "Girl, I didn't know you were coming back today," like my arrival was the surprise, not the marriage. And my mother kept squeezing my hands like she was trying to squeeze my anger out of me before it could embarrass her. Danielle stepped closer, still smiling, and lowered her voice just enough to make it personal. "I know it's a shock," she said, "but you were gone. And I mean, you're always gone, always chasing something. Marcus needed someone who puts family first. Do you know how it feels to have your ambition turned into the reason you deserved to be betrayed? To have people act like your hard work is a flaw they can punish you for?" My throat tightened, and I felt that familiar fear rise. The fear of being painted as the angry black woman in a room full of witnesses. The fear that if I raised my voice even 1 inch, my parents would point at me and say, "See, this is why." Marcus's eyes flicked to my face, and I could see it. He wanted me to explode. He wanted the scene. He wanted a reason to say I was unstable, dramatic, too much. Danielle wanted it too. She wanted to look like the calm bride while I looked like the bitter sister. So I did what I've learned to do when the world is waiting for me to fit into their worst expectation of me. I held my face still. I breathed slow, and I stared at the ring on his finger, the dress on her body, my mother's pleading eyes, my father's silence. Then Danielle said the part that was meant to finish me. "It's okay," she whispered, like she was being generous. "You'll find someone else. But Marcus wanted stability. And honestly, he has money. He needs someone who isn't always chasing a dream." Money. There it was. The reason she thought she'd won. The reason my parents were standing behind her like this was a good decision. Danielle squeezed Marcus's hand and smiled right into my face. "We didn't want to tell you while you were overseas. We didn't want you distracted." Distracted. Like my life was a child you keep busy with toys while adults make decisions for it. My mother finally looked up at me and said, Baby, please, just let it go. They're married now. Let it go? Like love is a receipt you can't return. Like my future was just a misunderstanding. And that's when I realized the betrayal wasn't just Danielle and Marcus. The betrayal was the way my parents had already decided I should swallow it to keep the peace. I stood there with my suitcase still in my hand, feeling every eye in that room waiting for me to react, waiting for me to cry, waiting for me to scream. Danielle's smile was so smug that it was almost gentle. She thought she was about to watch me break. Marcus watched me like a man bracing for consequences he believed he could talk his way out of. And I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not peace, clarity. Because suddenly I could see the whole thing. They weren't just celebrating a wedding, they were celebrating my replacement. So I smiled. And then I laughed. Not a hysterical laugh, not a bitter laugh meant to be cute, a real laugh that made Danielle's smile falter for the first time. Because she thought she married him for his money, but standing there looking at Marcus's face, I realized she had no idea what she'd actually signed up for. And I didn't say it yet. I just kept laughing long enough to make the room uncomfortable, long enough to make Marcus shift on his feet, long enough to make my sister's eyes narrow with panic. Then I leaned in close to Danielle, still smiling, and I said softly, "Congratulations." And the way Marcus flinched when I said it told me everything, because he knew what Danielle didn't. And in a minute, I was going to make sure she found out too. I know how it looked, me standing there in my parents' living room with my sister in my dress and my fiancé wearing a wedding ring like it belonged to him. And instead of screaming, I laughed. But have you ever had a moment so cruel your body refuses to react the way everyone expects because something inside you already understands the truth? The second Danielle said money, the second she said it like that was the punchline, like she'd finally won the only prize she ever cared about, I felt this strange calm settle over my fear because I wasn't laughing at the marriage. I was laughing at the illusion, at the fact that my sister thought she'd stolen a rich man when I had already found out Marcus wasn't rich, not in the way he was selling it. 2 weeks before my trip, Marcus came home in that too cheerful mood he gets when he's hiding something, talking fast about investments and timing, telling me we should open a joint account for the wedding, saying it like it was romantic, like it was normal. And when I hesitated, when I asked one simple question, why now? His face tightened for a half second. Then he kissed my forehead and said, because I want us to be a team. But the same night, after he fell asleep, his phone lit up with an email preview from a law office, and the subject line wasn't love or wedding planning. It was a number, a case number, with words like notice and payment and final. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. Have you ever realized you're not being loved, you're being positioned? I didn't dig through his phone. I didn't need to. The next day, I did the one thing I'd always avoided because I didn't want to look suspicious. I ran a credit check for both of us, the way my financial advisor told me to before marriage. And what came back made my hands go numb. Debts I'd never heard of, cards maxed out, a personal loan in default, a lien. And then something worse, an inquiry tied to my information, my address, like he'd been trying doors to see which ones would open under my name. I sat there staring at the screen, hearing my mother's voice in my head, "Don't be dramatic," while my body screamed, "This man is a risk." So I confronted Marcus carefully, not loud, not emotional, just facts. And he didn't deny it the way an innocent person would. He got offended. He got cold. He said I was acting like his enemy. He said all men have debt, like it was a personality trait. And then he did what he always did when he wanted control back. He made it about my tone. You're always suspicious. You're always looking for a problem. And that's when I understood. He didn't want a wife, he wanted a shield, a clean name, a woman who looked stable and respectable on paper. So I did what smart women do when their heart is broken, but their future is on the line. I didn't sign anything. Because a few days later, a prenup draft appeared in my email, and the language inside wasn't protecting a rich man, it was protecting a drowning one. It had little clauses that looked normal until you read them twice. Me waiving rights, me assuming responsibilities, me agreeing not to pursue certain assets or question certain accounts. He wanted my signature more than he wanted my vows. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend of mine, and she called me immediately and said, "Do not sign this, and do not marry him until you know exactly what he's hiding." Then the final piece fell into my lap while I was overseas. In the middle of my competition week, when my phone was buzzing with half answers and weird silence, an email came from an address I didn't recognize at first until I saw the signature. Marcus's stepmother. Short message, no greeting, just, "I don't know what he told you. He's been cut off. Please protect yourself. Do not link finances. Do not sign anything. He is desperate." Desperate. That word stuck with me because it explained everything. Why he wanted the joint account, why he wanted me distracted, why he'd been rushing the wedding, why he'd been acting like my career opportunity was inconvenient. He didn't want me overseas because he missed me. He wanted me overseas because I was harder to warn, harder to reach, easier to replace. And suddenly, the whole scene in my parents' house made sense. He didn't pick Danielle because he loved her. He picked Danielle because she was impulsive enough to say yes fast, hungry enough for status to ignore red flags, and surrounded by parents willing to clap for a wedding they didn't understand. So when my sister stood there smug and shining and introduced him as her husband, my laugh wasn't weakness, it was recognition. It was me finally seeing the trap he tried to set for me and realizing he'd walked my sister straight into it instead. Then I looked at Marcus across the room, at how tight his jaw was, at how his eyes kept flicking between me and my parents like he was calculating damage control. And I knew my next move had to be clean, because if he could steal my future, he could also try to steal my credibility. So I wiped the last of my laughter off my face, picked up my suitcase like I hadn't just been gutted in front of a crowd, and I said, calm enough to make everyone lean in, "Since we're celebrating legal paperwork today, can somebody show me the marriage certificate?" And the way Marcus stiffened at that one sentence told me I'd finally grabbed the right thread. The room got quiet the second I asked for it, like everybody suddenly remembered paperwork is where fantasies go to die. Danielle's smile twitched just a little, and my mother's fingers tightened around her glass like she wanted to crush it. Marcus didn't look at me. He looked at my father like he was silently asking him to shut me down. And my father did what he always did when I wouldn't play along. He tried to make me feel like the problem. "Why do you need to see that?" he asked, voice low, warning. I stared at him and said, "Because you're all standing here acting like I'm supposed to clap. So yes, show me the legal part." Have you ever noticed how fast people stop smiling when you ask for proof? Danielle tilted her chin. "It's filed," she said, too quickly. "We got married at the courthouse. It's done." "Great, then it's easy. Where's the certificate?" Marcus finally spoke, smooth as syrup. "Baby, why are you doing this? You're tired. You just got off a flight." "Don't call me that," I said, still calm, because I could feel everyone waiting for me to turn into a stereotype. "Just show it." Danielle rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic, then turned to my mother. "Mom has it," she said. My mother's face went pale in a way that told me she did have it, and she had been praying I wouldn't ask. She walked to the kitchen drawer like she was walking to an execution, pulled out a folded document, and held it out to me without meeting my eyes. My hands were steady. My stomach wasn't. I unfolded it slowly because part of me still wanted the universe to tell me this was a misunderstanding, that I'd wake up in my hotel room overseas and none of it would be real. But it was real. 2 names, 2 signatures, one date. And right there, under groom, was the moment Danielle's whole little victory started to rot. Because the name on the certificate wasn't Marcus Whitfield. It wasn't the name my parents had been bragging about. It was the name on the engagement announcement. It was a different name entirely. A full, legal name I'd never seen him use. The kind of name you don't accidentally forget to mention. I looked up slowly, holding the paper in the air like it weighed 100 pounds. "Danielle," I said softly, "who did you marry?" Her face faltered. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, stepping toward me. I turned the certificate so she could see it. And the second her eyes hit that name, her face changed. Confusion first, then denial, then that tight panic people get when they realize they've been tricked in public. "That's his legal name," Marcus said, fast, too fast, like he'd been waiting to explain it. "It's just paperwork." I stared at him. "So you lied. You proposed to me under one name and married my sister under another?" My father tried to cut in. "People use middle names." But I wasn't listening anymore because my brain had already connected it to the case number email I saw before my trip, the debts, the rush for joint accounts, the desperation his stepmother warned me about. I pulled out my phone and searched the legal name right there in front of everyone. Just typed it in. One simple search. And within seconds, the screen filled with exactly what my gut had been trying to warn me about. Filings, a business dissolution, a civil judgment, and then the word that made Danielle's knees look like they might buckle. Fraud. Multiple cases. Recent. Open. I held my phone up and asked, "Is this the money you married him for?" Danielle's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't find oxygen. "No," she whispered, looking at Marcus like he was supposed to fix it. Marcus stepped forward, hands out, voice low, trying to soothe her the way con men soothe people right before the bill comes due. "Babe, listen, it's complicated." "Don't call her babe," I said, sharp enough to slice the air, but still controlled. Then I turned to my mother. "You approved this?" My mother's eyes filled. He said it was a fresh start," he stammered. "He said you were too focused on work, and Danielle would make a home." A home? For a man with judgments and fraud cases under a different name? I looked at my father. "You didn't check anything. You didn't protect me. You didn't protect her either. You just wanted a wedding." Danielle started shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, no," like she could undo ink with denial. Then she looked at Marcus with pure rage. "You said you were established," she hissed. "You said you had money." Marcus's mask finally slipped, just for a second, irritation flashing through his polished face. "I have money coming," he snapped. "You think you're the first person who's had to wait?" Wait. Like she was an investor, like love was a payment plan. The room erupted, my mother crying, Danielle yelling, cousins whispering, my father demanding everyone calm down, while Marcus did the one thing men like him always do when their story collapses. He tried to exit. He pushed past my father and headed for the door like a man who knew his lies couldn't survive daylight. Danielle screamed his name and ran after him in my wedding dress, and I stood there watching my family chase the mess they chose over me. Then I turned to my mother, who was shaking, crying, embarrassed, and I said the sentence that finally made her look at me like a daughter instead of a problem. "You didn't just betray me, you almost signed her life away, too." And in that moment, with the house in chaos and my heart aching in a way I wouldn't wish on anybody, I realized this was the real climax. Not the stolen fiancé, not the dress, not the wedding. The real climax was watching the truth hit them like a wave and knowing I was finally done drowning to keep them dry.